Hello, this is Dean Radin, and I'm on Your Superior Self.
Hi, I'm Anita Moorjani, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hello, this is Dr. Raymond Moody, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, Cultural Creatives. I'm Bruce Lipton, and I'm here to join you with Your Superior Self.
This is Paul Selig, and this is Your Superior Self.
What's up, everybody? I'm Aubrey Marcus, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, I'm Anne Berube, and I am on Your Superior Self.
And thank you so much for taking the time. I just really enjoyed your book, The Burnout Antidote. I think this is probably the most important book that's out right now, especially in the time that we're in with, the pandemic and all of the, resistance that's out there, the vibrations that have changed since, the elections, everything that's happening in society. I feel like we are feeling the burnout more than ever. So one, thank you for writing this book. And two, thank you for taking the time.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
The burnout, right? The burnout antidote. Let me just get your definition of what burnout is, because it may be different for everyone listening right now.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, as a spiritual teacher, I see it as a crisis in meaning. And so when you come to a place in your life where what you've been doing is no longer meaningful and is no longer aligned with where you're going, and this is happening faster and faster now, right? With the acceleration in consciousness and the expansion that's happening, what was meaningful sometime yesterday is not meaningful today, when before we could take 5-10 years, a whole career focused on that one thing, and it was very meaningful for a long time. It's not like that anymore. We are kind of invited to live multiple lifetimes in this one lifetime, and we always get that choice. We always get that moment where we hit the wall, or we feel depleted, or we feel disenchanted, we feel run down, and we just want to throw in the towel. And instead of just giving it all up, this book that I wrote, and I wrote it from my own experience, is about helping you address the beliefs that are living in the tissue of the body that perhaps come from your conditioning, from your the way that the environment was around you, the traumas you've had when you were growing up, and at this point on your in your soul mission, it's just not serving you anymore, and it's actually draining you, and it's taking more energy to keep them around than it is doing the job of keeping you safe, which is what it's done for so long. Mm-hmm. And so and I'm sure a lot of your listeners and like this core essence, this higher self, like this signal of light that we are, that is who we are, constantly wants to incarnate even more in this device, in this beautiful body. And so we can tap into the messaging of this inner signal, and along with the letting go of the beliefs, we can kind of find that energy again and find that vitality again. Because when what you do and why you do what you do is completely aligned with who you really are, there's abundance of energy. And I think there's a misconception too in the spiritual world, and I had this one as well for many years, is that once you find your path, once you've healed and found, you can say, I know who I am, that I had this limiting belief that you don't burn out, but it's not true. It's just the beginning of new invitations and new openings for transformation over and over and over again. And at the beginning, I remember I thought, well, I've already done this, been there, done that, wrote the book. Why am I still visiting this issue? And it's like, well, it's not the same. It's not in the same context. I'm always evolving. I'm always changing. So in this context, I'm addressing burnout at a deeper level, at a spiritual level, because I know that a spiritual solution brings quantum shifts, not just incremental changes. I think we're kind of tired and done with incremental changes, just little changes. We want we want the shifts. And so when you address a problem at a spiritual level, you really address it at the deeper roots, and it brings you somewhere different than where you've been.
So much in there that I love. There's so much. You're so good at describing it, like burnout, right? Like people feel it all the time. And it's like, is it, I feel it physically. So is that like my consciousness, my spirit communicating to me that we're just misaligned and we're not really pursuing the things that we should be doing?
It's trying to get your attention. And it's, and I'm very careful in the book to make sure that people know that it's not a punishment. It's not that you've done, that you're on the wrong path because it's, and that you're doing something wrong. It's really not like that. It's more about, hey, your body's saying, hey, beautiful, I want your attention, because there's something about what you're doing and how you're doing and why you're doing it that is just not meant for this next part of your incarnation. And so it's positive. Burnout is a gift, right? Like if we could see it as a gift, that it's not going to let your body destroy itself. It's going to, it's going to say, hey, I want your attention now because there's something quite amazing on the horizon for you. But if you keep continuing what you've been doing and how you've been doing, why you've been doing it, it's not, you're not going to feel fulfilled.
Amen. That's all I have to say to that. But when we don't listen to the soul, when we don't listen to higher intelligence, and we keep pushing, is there a wall that we hit, or do we just keep suffering?
Well, I think it's Oprah that says, like, at the beginning, it's a whisper, and then it's like a loud voice, and then it's a scream, and then it's like the whole house falls on you. Like, so, it's not that you keep suffering, and you could numb yourself. You could decide, I'm not going to engage this change. I'm not going to go through this healing. I don't want to. It's too much. Like, and we see it a lot, right? Especially during the pandemic, like alcohol sales went up. Like, a lot of people, it's too much. It's a lot. So it's definitely not everybody who's choosing to live like this. But it is kind of the name of the game right now. It's especially if you've already awakened once or twice, you're super sensitive, like you were mentioning before the interview. Like, now it's hard to go back. It's hard to change how you.
Sure.
Yeah, I completely forgot the question you asked. I went on a tangent.
But I love the tangent. I love it. I love this. I love this stuff. Like, this is my first interview since doing some healing work on myself physically. And I was telling Anne before the interview that I feel more sensitive to energies and to emotions and to people's stories. Like I told her, I was like, I'm sorry if I'm really sensitive. Like, I might start breaking out crying. I don't know. But I just, something's happening inside of me, that a lot of negative energy or pent up energy or stress or emotions that have been lost for a long time are starting to resurface, and I'm starting to feel everything. And I think it's so different. It's so different for me. Like, I'm so used to kind of acting on a program and doing my things on my daily checklist and kind of going through the motions and not being emotionally, I guess, intelligent about how I'm feeling, why I'm feeling, like, what is this coming up? Like, why is this arising? So when things come up, I'm kind of like, I don't know what to do with it. Like, I feel sadness, but I don't know, there's nothing in my environment that should be causing this sadness. So apparently that must be something I have not dealt with, and it's not bad, right? It's just something that's different. And I'm learning, like really learning, like literally right now, as I speak to you, learning how to just embody it, right? And just, it's a part of me that something needs to come up, right? Like, is that something that you teach your clients?
Absolutely. Yeah. And so in the work, and I describe this in the book, this embodied process of healing is that when a trauma happened, and it could be a big one, it could be a small one, it could be something you think is insignificant, but your body remembers. You might not actually remember intellectually, like your memory doesn't recall, but your body, like the body never lies, and the body kept track of everything. So the way you describe it is beautiful, because when I bring a client into their bodies, which is where I go first, right? It's like deep breath in through the nose and then out through the mouth. And you constrict the throat a little bit on the exhalation so that your vagus nerve is massaged, and then your parasympathetic system kind of kicks in. And you deepen the breath and you exaggerate the breath. And then you bring your attention, I invite them to close their eyes, bring their attention into the body. With a feather is usually the tool that I use. It's kind of floating feather into the body, and you go down the spine, and then maybe you stop at the heart, and then you breathe deeply into that space. And then let's say you notice a sadness. If someone has never done healing work, the sadness will arrive, and almost instantly there'll be a story or a thought about the sadness. And then the person automatically will go into the story, and they'll start to talk about the story about the sadness. But what happened when the trauma first happened is it registered in the nervous system, in the fascia, in the organs, in the bones, in the skin, like it registered in the body first. And then a story and a defense mechanism and a belief, they were created based on the integration at the cellular level of the trauma. So when we could talk therapy about what happened for 10 years, but if we go below the story, so my job is to bring the person, okay, I hear that there is a story and you have thoughts about this, but let's go back to the direct experience in the body of the sadness. What does it feel like sensation-wise? That's more important than the thoughts about it, or even you identifying what the sadness is about. So when you said, I just have this sadness, but there's nothing sad around me, that's beautiful, because you do not need content to heal. You don't need to know why. And then there's a speed of healing that happens that cannot happen with the intellect, cannot happen if we talk about the story, if you breathe into the sensation of the sadness. And then say, how does it feel? And then people will say, well, it feels like, and then they go back in the story. No, what is the actual direct sensation in your body? Does it feel hot? Does it feel cold? Does it feel like pressure? Does it feel sharp pain? Does it feel like weight? And then I'll say, does it have a color or a shape? And then the person is really identifying with the abstract direct sensation. And from there, you can invite it to move. You say, hi, beautiful. Hi, sweetheart. I love you so much. I'm so sorry you're hurting. We're not in the story. We're actually talking to the sensation like we're talking to a little child. And that's the middle of my book. Like that's the center of like the inner child work. It's like, okay, how can we do inner child work, but really with an embodied perspective?
Well, let's get to the beginning of it, right? Like, so the book, I can talk about this all day, but I think it's important that we get your story out too, right? Like you're saying all the right things for me, and I can feel it. And when you ask what color, it's yellow. And then when I feel it, it's like right below my heart and it's cold, right? So we'll come back to that later. But you're speaking my language, but you came from a world of academia, right?
Yes.
What department were you in? Were you in psychology, psychotherapy, like
French literature?
French literature. And now we're talking about souls. We're talking about consciousness. We're talking about empaths, highly sensitive people. How did that transformation, what did that look like for you?
Well, when I was 23 years old, I had a car accident. My partner at the time was driving, and he took a left turn into oncoming traffic, and a half-ton truck hit our car. And on the impact, my liver lacerated and my lungs partially collapsed, and I was out. And in that moment, I had a near-death experience. I saw like a movie in front of my mind's eyes, my life. It was clear as day. I felt so real, but it wasn't the life that I was living. It was the life I came to live, but I was not doing that at the time. And so when I woke up the next day in the hospital, I promised myself I would change my ways. I mean, I was definitely not an emotionally healthy person back then. And so the process started after the car accident. About 5 years after that, I was dealing with chronic pain. And then I discovered an embodied approach to healing from chronic pain. And so those two experiences, which I described in depth in the book, well, not in depth, but I definitely share the story, that more about the stories, really made me see that I cared more about the humans than I cared about, literary theories.
Mhm.
And so it changed my life completely, my health, my feeling of fulfillment, my feeling of joy. Like, it's completely changed my life to discover this embodied approach to not just healing, but to fulfilling your soul mission.
Mhm.
And so then I thought, I want to share it. I want to share that with people. I want people to experience the freedom that I felt and that I experienced and how I live now. I remember Deepak Chopra asking me, like, what do you want the most? I said, I want inner freedom. Like, I want to feel free when I go to bed at night and wake up in the morning. I just want to feel free. Like, I felt so trapped with my thoughts and the suffering from my past. And so when I got to that place, I had to share it with people.
Mhm. Do you feel free now? Do you have that inner freedom?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It doesn't mean life still doesn't send me a lot of struggles and things, right? I have 2 kids. I live in the world, and but I am free. Absolutely.
So you go from French literature. I'm assuming that you're teaching at a university.
Yeah.
How do you go to the embodiment practice, right? Like, what modality is it? I've heard you speak about Huna. Did you find that, like, on your search when you made that conscious decision of, hey, I want to pursue this, or I want to, how did you stumble upon it? And then what made you, I mean, the embodiment, right? Like the practical methods that you were practicing in your own life, you felt the release and the freedom and said, I need to teach other people this. Like, how'd you come across Huna?
So before I came across Huna, I came across epigenetics, and it was my mother-in-law who invited me to a program called Women in Leadership. And at the time, I was very, very focused, like intellectually focused. And I thought, wow, that's really good. My ego was happy with this title, like Women in Leadership. Yeah, I'm already pretty bossy, and I'm, I'll probably be head of a department one day. And, yeah, I'll go to this course. But I didn't know what was going to happen. And if I did know, I don't think I would have ever gone. So I'm glad the universe and my mother-in-law tricked me into going to this workshop. There was a one-day workshop. And I remember Trey sitting like in a circle with 12 women. And there was one woman, and the teacher was right in front of me. And she was talking about a very different kind of leadership. And she's talking about a leadership that comes from within, that is connected to emotions, that is deeply intuitive, connected to the belly. And, breathing, deep breathing is so important in this leadership. And the more she's talking, the more my chronic pain is getting worse in my body. At the time, it was sinus pain. Like, it was just, I could not focus. It was so intense. It lasted for 3 years, nonstop. And I just thought, I just want her to stop talking so I can take a break, go to the washroom, and just not come back. Like, I could feel my body like under pressure. And women in the room were just crying spontaneously. Nobody seemed to think it was a problem. And my ego was like, this is supposed to be a leadership course. What is happening here? And she never took a break. She looked at me and she said, Anne, are you okay? She could tell I was like a pressure cooker. And I said, my heart was like saying, sweetheart, say that you're not okay. Tell her how much pain you're feeling. And in my head, it was like, don't say anything. Like, if you say anything, I can't help you. Like, we're going to lose control. Right. And so I said, no, I'm fine. Like, I was like, move on to the next person. And she says, Anna, I invite you to take a deep, deep breath. And so in that moment when my whole body just is so annoyed, so angry, in so much pain, I don't want to be there, to take a breath, a deep breath, is counterinstinctual. Like, my whole body's like, mayday, mayday, get out of here. Especially in front of your mother-in-law, especially, like, there's an image you want to protect when you don't know. another way of living. And so I don't know why I did it, but it was counterinstinctual, but it was deeply intuitive. I just listened to my heart. I took this deep breath in through my nose. And then as I breathe out, oh my goodness, this wave of emotion just comes just washing through me. My whole body starts to shake. And now I'm the one in this mess of snot and tears. And like, it feels like such a spectacle. My whole body is processing so much water, so much energy. And she even comes over and she puts her hand on my back and she says, everybody, this is what it looks like when someone's held 28 years of emotional baggage in their body. So this was 5 years after the car accident. And nobody seemed to mind. Everybody was breathing, doing their own thing. And then my whole body settled. And then it was super calm and still. And there was no thoughts in my head. And it was very akin to the feeling of the near-death experience in the car accident. And there was no more pain. So I've been living with that chronic pain for 3 years and it was gone. It hasn't come back. And that was, 18, 19 years ago now. Mm-hmm. And so that's how I was introduced to epigenetics. I was introduced to the fact that the body registers the environment and the experiences in the cells of the body, and the cells can't be in protection mode and in growth mode at the same time. So when I'm protecting myself by keeping my attention up in my intellect and not in my body, when I keep myself protected by not breathing deeply, when I keep myself protected by believing things that are not true anymore, I cannot grow. I cannot be creative. And this is what we know. We know this from science, like from biology. A cell cannot protect itself and also grow. And that's the same thing for us. So when I keep at bay the stuff I don't want to feel because it's too much or I think it's bad, I'm also keeping at bay the peace and the joy and the light that's available to me. So you talked about suffering earlier. Like, do we keep on suffering? Well, what happens eventually is your body just gets used to not new energies coming in because it knows that you prefer to stay in protection. That for you to be safe is more important than to be well, or more important than to be creative or to be who you're meant to be. So that's how I kind of came. And then this teacher introduced me to Huna, and I went to Kauai to study Huna, which was, talk about epigenetics, and then you talk about shamanism, right? Like it's a very wide spectrum of experience.
Oh, man. Yeah, because I live in my head a lot, and I think a lot of people do too. Mm-hmm. And I don't know necessarily how to live in my body. I don't know how to without, right? Like you feel a little bit of a pinch here or a trigger there. How do we consciously on a daily basis live in our body and learn to stay there when it gets a little, dicey?
It's definitely practice. So what you did earlier, where you noticed the yellow, cold experience in your lower body, you were there, you were not in your head in that moment. You were in that space. And when your attention is on the tissue of your body or it's in the direct experience, you're in the present moment. When you're up in your head, you're either in the past or the future, right? And so the practice of bringing your attention down, and I have a beautiful meditation I'd be happy to share it with you and happy to share it with your viewers as well, where you just follow the feather down in the body and you take your time at each area in the body, because each area carries different memories, right? Carries different memories from the past and different meaning because of the energy centers in the body. So practicing a meditation like that definitely helps. Another way is to, moment to moment, bring your attention back to somewhere below the neck. Is just, if you think about it, just bring your attention somewhere else. Even in, I usually, if people have never done it, I say start with your hand. Like bring your attention to the center of your hand, your right palm, and just see if you could feel the blood rushing in your palm. And if someone has never been body aware, it will take a while, but then they'll start to feel like, oh yeah, I can feel that. That's huge. That is presence. That is presence. That's movement of energy. That's being here now. And so this is one thing, but what if we bring our attention to the yellow cold in your body? So we go there and we breathe into that space and we start to talk to that sensation. Hi, beautiful. Hi, sweetheart. I love you so much. We're talking to the yellow cold sensation like we're talking to a child that we love. So think about your youngest, right? And you just, that's how we want to talk to ourselves. That's how we want to talk to our inner child. I love you so much. I'm so sorry that you're hurting, but you know what? I'm here. I'm here with you right now. Deep breaths. And you know what? I'm not going anywhere. That's what we wanted to know when we were children, that when we were feeling something, that the person we were witnessed, and that the person wasn't going to go until we were done feeling the feeling we had. So that's what we do for ourselves. And then we ask it, what do you need? What do you want? And so for you, like, I don't know if you said it was more in the center or in the right or the left.
It's like right underneath, like right here. It's like not,
Right
it's
here.
like a little top of the stomach area, I guess.
Yeah.
Like sternum,
So,
maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. Like solar plexus kind of area, but more on the right side. Yeah. So then we say, we ask the sensation, would you like to come up? Or would you like to go down? Because that experience, like that sensation, has a desire to move somewhere. Movement is life. Movement is healing. So if you ask it with your inner, conversation, you say, where would you like to go? Do you want to go up into my heart space? Or would you like to go down in my belly? And then you follow that.
Yeah, mine instinctually wants to go up, like up. I don't know. Like past the heart, almost up to like the crown almost.
Perfect. So then you follow that. You just breathe deeply and you let it go up, and then you notice. And a lot of people, as it goes up, it will kind of get trapped in the throat. The throat will start to close because often we weren't able to speak the experience. And so we breathe deeply into the throat. And so, it's really fascinating. And we don't need to know the story about that. And it could be gone in like a minute.
Sure. Wow, man. I don't, yeah. And I know a lot of people are feeling this too, because first week of school this week, right? I have 3 kids. I'm going back to school, like for psychology. And I had my first graduate level course last night, and the entire time I'm just kind of like, I don't know if I can do this. Everyone had so I'm in this master or bachelor accelerated master program where I'm still working towards my undergrad, but it's also towards my master's, right, in psychology. And everyone in there is doing introductions, and I'm like, that doubt comes creeping in because I'm the only one without a master or without a bachelor's degree. Like everyone else has like a bachelor's, they're working on their second master's, and I'm like sitting there, I'm like, first off, I'm a little woohoo, and I like spirituality and I love consciousness. And, I tend to go towards some of the unpopular topics in psychology, how traditional and conventional psychology is, right?
Yeah.
So immediately I'm just feeling stress about and anxiety about the studies and like, am I going to be able to do this? Like maybe that's where the sadness is coming from. Maybe it's like a little residue from last night, but it's like, again, I'm feeling it more. And like, it could be something that was, captured when I was a child of inadequacy, like of not being enough or not having confidence in myself or something, right? Like, I'm sure you hear a lot of similarity or similar stories, but last night I really felt it, especially after some of the healing that I've done. I just want to be more my body, but it's very confusing because I've never been there, if that makes sense. Even though I have a body, like I've never really lived in it. Like I've always kind of run away from unfavorable sensations. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. I did psychology in university, and I couldn't do it because, and it's definitely not aligned with this way of thinking yet. And so what you're describing, the experience you had in, what's happening with consciousness is it's going much more into a sacred feminine way of living for men and women. And that's what you described, like, I want to be like intuitive, I want to be creative, like I want to just stay connected. But as soon as we go up in our intellect and we have to be a certain way for certain people or in certain environments, that's the masculine. And it's definitely the way we were taught was an unhealthy masculine way of being. And so right now, I guess what's happening for you is that you're shifting into, how is it that you want to live? Like, what do you want to lead your moment to moment? Do you want your heart and your soul to lead your moment to moment existence? Or do you want your, intellect to manage and control your existence? And my sense is that you're shifting into more of a allowing in inviting and allowing, as opposed to managing and controlling.
I want to lead more with my heart. And when we did some of the healing work, it's noticeable. Like this guy pointed it out. He was like, if you stand straight up, your head is tilted out further than your chest should be straight back, and your head should be in a line with it, where I'm kind of a little bit more forward with my head. And he's like, you lead too much with your head. You integrate yourself through your head. Problems, social situations, it's always intellect. You need to be in your heart more. And I want to be more heart guided, more heart led, because I feel that's where you communicate more with the universe, and you can align yourself a little bit more and actually get more aligned with your purpose. You feel like that's where the truth, for me anyway, that's where I feel the truth is.
Yes.
Instead of going up in my head and kind of being analytical about things and looking at the evidence that's physical, I'd rather sit back and receive guidance of truth, right? Like I don't know how else to explain it.
No, you explained it really well. And on top of all that, what it does to lead with your heart is that when you are helping someone else, you're actually not listening to their problems. And I talk about this in the book, is the difference between embodied and disembodied empathy, embodied and disembodied leadership, embodied and disembodied anger. So when you're leading from your heart, you're actually tapping into the wisdom that the person holds. So you're not just saying things that you've planned to say, or you're not rehashing the past. Like, it's just, you're actually connected to the wisdom, and then you know what you need to say, not intellectually, but just because it comes up
intuitively, right?
Yeah. And it is and so that's how I teach all my workshops. It's how I write. Like, I just trust that when I will show up in front of those people, I will know, because their energy and my energies are communicating, and I'm not listening to my thoughts. I'm listening to the calibration that's happening between us. And then the words come. Like, that is easy. That's easy. I don't need to plan. I don't need to make like an outline. I just have to trust. And that's what psychics do. That's what mediums do, right? Like, but they'll do it just in that moment where they'll just really listen to what's coming through. But you can do that when you're working as a psychologist as well, right? You can just calibrate, and things that you never could have come up with your intellect. So yes to living from the heart. And it is a process. Don't be too hard on yourself. It's a process, right? Like, I think we want it to happen overnight, but it is the body. The soul is so fast, but the body's slow. And so it's layers and layers, but your commitment to it will accelerate everything.
Well, listening to the body, right? Talk
Yeah.
about your story with Anita Moorjani when you went with her on a trip, right? Talk about that communication with your body.
Yes. And so I had left I'd been traveling so much with Anita and with other speakers. I used to, be an agent and a producer. And so traveling to Europe was not a new thing. But this time it felt different. I felt like something was annoying me. Like I wasn't sure I wanted to go. My daughter was very young and she was so upset I was leaving again. And it just something didn't feel quite right. But I thought, no, this is it's my role. It's what I do. I'm good at it. People count on me. I should go. And so I went. And then when we got there at the airport, we met up in the airport on the way to where we were going. And she said, I want you to know that the event that we were going to has been canceled, but I thought it would be nice for us to have like a retreat together. And I remember like just feeling the fire coming up, like rising, like being like almost angry because my wounded child was like, I wish you told me. I wanted to make that decision for myself. I would have stayed home with my daughter. I would not have gone if I knew that I didn't have to work, right? Because I could, like, it's just how I organize things in my head. If I didn't have to work, then I would have had to make a choice. Do I want to go on a leisure trip with you? And then we get to where we're going, and it's just dreary, and it's cold, and it's wet, and the people there are so strange. And I am in this very austere room in a monastery, and I'm like, I feel so far away from anyone I know, anyone that could help me. And I am so annoyed and I can't sleep. I'm like shivering. I'm so cold, like everything about that place was mirroring what was going on inside me. And I kind of kept it in for a couple days. And then on the third day, she wanted to go visit one of the towns around the South France. And so we went, and then I decided I have to tell her that I'm feeling this anger. So I said, Anita, like, I really wish you would have told me, like, I don't know if I would have come. And she, oh my gosh, she apologized, felt so bad. She's like, I never wanted to make you feel like this. And then she says, like, Anne, but I know why this happened. And then, when you're in your ego and you're hurt and you're wounded, like, you don't want to be coached, right? You also don't want to be coached by the person you think, is at fault. You're completely like in the defensive. So I'm thinking, oh no, don't tell me, like, what are you going to say? And then she says, you're done with this work. Like, you're done with supporting other people's work. You're done with producing events. You're done with being an agent. Like, the reason is that you're supposed to be the teacher. And I remember thinking, like, she is so right, but I'm so embarrassed right now. Like, I am so embarrassed because I'm supposed to be here helping you. Like, for me, one of my biggest wounds is that I needed to be needed. And I talk about that in the book quite a bit, that since I was very young, my mom needed me emotionally, and I was there for her. And when I was there for her, I got love from her. So love for me was when someone needed me. I didn't know love, a free love, and a love that was just because I didn't know that. And so that was part of that wound that I was, revisiting, is the mother wound with Anita. And, the next morning I woke up and I was feeling so much better from just having spoken the truth of my experience, having been witnessed by someone, and then having had this like insight around, I have to listen to when my body is sending me all these signals that this is not meant for you anymore, even though it makes no sense intellectually. And I woke up the next day and it's bright and sunny. I meet all these really nice people. I have the best time. And so, yeah, it's definitely it's a good example of the mirror, right? How it's never about what it's about. It's never about what it appears to be about. It's always about what's happening inside. Always. It's never someone, and we do it. I mean, I do it with my husband all the time. You go up in your head and you want to blame, you're not feeling good and you're like, well, if only he did more of this and that, then, and I catch myself now, as soon as I start to blame him for anything, I go, wait a second, it's not him. Bring it back. What is it really about?
That takes a long time to develop that muscle. I could tell you that right now.
The ego does not like when you say, oh, it must be me. It's like, no, it's them. It's always been them. It's very strong, but it's actually never them. And I say this lightly, and I like, if someone's going through like domestic violence or is, has abuse in their life, like, I'm not saying like, and I see a lot of people staying in those relationships when they're very spiritual because there's like, oh, I have so much to learn here. No, that's not what I mean. Leave. Like, do not. You are not there to change a person who is a narcissist or who is violent. This is not your path.
Well, when do you get like, so when you're in that relationship, right? And spiritual, like to your point, spiritual beings want to stay there and learn something. How do you know the difference between a learning situation and a situation that you need to get out of?
So the difference between feeling safe in your body at home and not. So if you're in a relationship where you're on your guard and you're vigilant more than 50% of the time during the day, then that's not an environment in which you can grow. So my relationship's not perfect, and so if I ran away every time something's not perfect, then I wouldn't grow. But I can only grow if I feel emotionally and physically safe when I'm in the presence of the person I'm with most of the time, like my primary relationship, and in my home. So when I go home at night, and I have to be vigilant until the person beside me falls asleep, that it doesn't matter your background, how much it's your fault, how much it's their fault, doesn't matter. What it means is that you are incapable of gaining perspective because your body's always in protection mode, in sympathetic reaction. That's it. And so you can't logically say why you need to leave, why you just have to. You have to move yourself out of that situation so that you can breathe, you can settle, and then you can have space to think and space to understand what's going on. But when you're always in sympathetic response, which is fight or flight, you'll never be able to access change and transformation.
What about work situations and environments, right? Like, especially now with the pandemic, I feel like a lot of people have realized what matters most to them in their lives, and that's lifestyle, especially on the East Coast. We are very fast and furious when it comes to to-do lists, success, goals, achievements, right? Back in the masculine, there's an order, there is a way we have to be in this world in order to fit in. And I know that I'm feeling it, and I know a lot of others are feeling it as well. Like, we don't want to be a part of the old paradigm, right? We want to be a part of the feminine. We want to be more creative. We want to be in our hearts. We want to care for people instead of managing people and what they're doing. We want to manage people by how they're feeling. How are you doing? Not what are you doing? But you feel it when you go out to some of these work environments and companies, in the office, when people are going back to the office. How do you know when it's time, right? How do you know when it's time to go look for something else? Or when do you know it's time for you to pursue a different idea of what work is?
So the body never lies. And that's one of the biggest things we need to learn, is when the body talks through fatigue, through pain, through any kind of suffering that's happening inside, we tend to dismiss it, or we tend to try to rationalize it, as opposed to just listen to it and then, make space. So when I say make space, and I talk about this in the second chapter of the book, is that I don't mean that you need to go to LA for a 7-day retreat or whatever, right? Like, you don't need to do big changes. But in order to get clarity around if you need to change careers, or if you need to change jobs, or you need to change environment, you do need to create some space in your life. And that can start with like a 5-minute practice when you wake up in the morning, with breath and attention in the body. I have in the book like multiple examples of how you can create space in your body, so that then you have more access to your own intuition, your own wisdom, your own medicine, and be able to know for sure what you want and what's true for you. But you can't really access that when you don't pay attention to what your body's saying to you. And so believe your body more than your thoughts about your body. Believe your body more than other people's opinion about what's happening in your body, right? We're just not used to believing ourselves. And I remember, like, when I started shamanic work, like, I was experiencing all these things in my body, and I thought, like, what are you doing to me? Like, I was saying to the shaman, like, what are you doing? And she said, I'm not doing anything. You are experiencing yourself as an energy being. And I would never have said that that's what it was. I would have said, oh my gosh, I'm having a heart attack. Oh my gosh, I'm having a panic attack. Oh my goodness, my body is out of whack, right? Because we've been trained to believe that the body is flawed and it's always against you, and that it's fragile, and that we're going to, that something's wrong with us, as opposed to going, oh wow, that is fire. Wow. That's amazing. Like, I am fire. I am air. I am water. I'm all of this. Yeah.
Shamanic work, right? How was your husband? Like, was he comfortable with these changes, right? Like, especially going and doing Huna, like, I think it could be a big adjustment for especially people that are coming into this work or listening to this interview, or kind of experiencing, or kind of dipping their toe into spirituality, where they start seeing, faster changes in themselves, and they start buying in more into this idea of epigenetics, or the feminine, or getting back in touch with their spirituality, where some people around them in their environment are still sleeping, right? Or unconscious to who we truly are. Was that like that for you, or was your husband 100% supportive of your change?
Well, it's actually the topic of my first book. It's called Be, Feel, Think, Do, and it's a memoir, and it was published by Hay House in 2017. And it's really the story of being able to see and accept and bring in a love like that in my life. Because before my car accident, I didn't think that I deserved a love like that. So I was self-sabotaging all over the place. And even with this person, that my husband now, I was sabotaging that relationship, and almost broke it forever, because I didn't believe I was worthy of a love that was free and that was so open. So it took me years to be able to, actually, and I saw him in my vision in my near-death experience, and we weren't together. And so I knew I needed to find my way back to him somehow, even though he was really upset with me because I had been very not nice. And so that, you know, when you only know love as transactional and as conditional, then that is what you attract. And so for a long time, I attracted only that. And of course, I couldn't be myself in those relationships because I didn't even know what that meant. But with this relationship, once, you know, we were married, we had children, my acceleration spiritually was really great. Like it was happening really, really quickly. And it really wasn't him that was holding me back. It was my worry that he wouldn't be able to see me or validate me as I become someone he didn't marry. So it really was me and my fears around being and not belonging in this very important relationship. One of the things that he struggled with was he was also afraid that he wouldn't be able to keep up. And he didn't tell me that for a while, so it was coming up as insecurity, but eventually, you know, once he were able to voice it, I was like, oh my gosh, you should have told me a long time ago. I thought something was wrong, or, you know, that he was worried that maybe I would, you know, just and then not be in the world with him. But that's not how it goes. Like, yes, you go to, like when I went to Kauai multiple times and I would do these shamanic workshops, like, of course I'd come back and I'd be all weird and I'd be like floating for a while, and, you know, and it's not easy, but at the end of the day, we're not meant to be on a cloud and completely like, you know, humming and like on the top of a mountain. We're meant to be like at the breakfast table with the mess and the cat and the kids. And it's like, you're supposed to be in the world with this awareness. And so it settles at some point and you find that way of living this deep spiritual truth, but in a very tangible way.
Who said it? I think Jesus, right? Be in this world, but not of it.
Yeah. Yeah. We're not humans. You're not human. You're not from this planet, but you're here to be with the humans.
And I could talk to you like all week.
Yeah, this was a really fun conversation.
The Burnout Antidote, a spiritual guide to empowerment for empaths, overgivers, highly sensitive people. And thank you so much for joining. How can people connect with you? How can they buy the book?
Berube.com. So ANNEBERUBE.com is my website. So they can find my book there. They can find it on Amazon. They can find it in a lot of stores. Yeah, and there's so much information on my website. Also, when you get the book, you have access to 23 meditations. They're recorded. So they're all written, but they're also recorded. So you can do the process and hear my voice guiding you through the meditations.
You have on the website, there's meditations?
Yeah. So in the book, I don't know if you have the hard copy or if you got the PDF from the publisher, but if you have the hard copy, I think it's in chapter 2. It says, for the recordings, go to anberube.com/burnout antidotes. Okay.
I'll be stopping there today for sure.
Yes.
And I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much for this conversation and just sharing the space.
Thanks for having me, Trey. It was delightful.